Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, featuring Clay Hall and also featuring Matt Wilhelm. I don't know what we're calling this now. We're recording this on a Friday. It's going through the weekend. Weekends. Do you have an uncle or a grandpa that had a W in their name, Matt? I mean, I guess it could be Mondays with Matt because this is going to stand up for Monday also. But Mondays with Matt. Yeah, let's just stick with what works. Forget about all these gadget plays. Mondays with Matt. Matt Wilhelm, welcome once again to the show, my man.
Great to be with you guys.
Hey, great being with you, brother, because we're going to talk about a lot of things. I mean, we're on the eve of of what is Christmas when it comes to college football, which is the national championship game. 129 schools or whatever they're in Division I didn't get what they wanted for Christmas, but two teams they're getting to play for the national championship. And it's Miami, Indiana. It's the Big Ten going for a third straight national championship. Just what's your thought on that, by the way, Matt, before we get into this, that, some of these things, it just means more, in the Southeastern Conference. And as I said yesterday on Twitter, it just means even more in the Big Ten. But what's your take on the way this thing is flip-flopped from the standpoint of maybe even public perception now of where the better football is being played?
Sure. I think so much of it has to do with the flip of the flip on its head that college football is still working through over the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And again,
good point.
I'm not in any regard, trying to throw, mud on anybody, but that Southeastern Conference, there's stories about the amount of money that was being thrown at recruits, both legally and illegally, to maintain them as the standard of college football. And I think I find it very funny that the moment that rules start to make things a little bit more equal for all and create a little bit more of a level playing field, and things need to be reported appropriately, how balance, and in this case, and not just to kind of like showcase the Big Ten over, what could be the national champion of the last 3 years, to your point. But I just think that there's just balance, and the fact that you have, an ACC team, showing up in the national championship, which a lot of people, haven't, kind of had in a very long time. So I think it's a lot like, again, we can go back and forth an awful lot about how college football is becoming pro football. And I know this because I lived it out, with Paul Tagliabue and then transition to Roger Goodell, and what Roger Goodell has done for the league in regards to making the game safer, driving revenue, is the NFL commissioner wants parity.
Yeah.
Why? Because you want to be able to turn on the tube on every Sunday and not know who's going to win. And I think that this year, just again, this playoff, all three of us can do a bracket. Well, shoot, I did one with Mason. We could all fill out a bracket and all have a different Super Bowl winner. And all have, and maybe even have two different teams playing from the NFC and the AFC in the Super Bowl. So that drives marketing, that drives money, that drives eyeballs. And I think what we have now is kind of like a returning back to the college game is I don't know who's going to win the Big Ten. I don't know who's going to win the SEC. I don't know who's going to win it used to be, it's always going to be Bama and Georgia. It's always going to be Ohio State,
or Michigan. Yeah.
Correct. Exactly. And so I think it's just it's an awesome curveball that allows, folks like us to stream shows like this and to sell marketing dollars as a part of the national championship, because you don't know who's going to be in it, even next year.
Yeah. But I liked your point there about not so much COVID made the change. It was what came along with COVID, which is NIL and transfer portal. And now, as the old saying goes, now that Ed Orgeron even says you come in the front door with the money, not the back door. I'm paraphrasing him. I mean, the guy won a national championship at LSU. It's funny how things have flipped. And I see Ohio State being as good next year as it was this year. It's going to be some rebuilding going on, some restructuring more than rebuilding, right? I mean, more like adding on a room and taking out a room. That kind of like construction analogy. But the point is, this is Indiana and Miami. And who had this 5 years ago of being a national championship game? You could see Miami, right, getting this act back together. But the Indiana story is literally hard to believe.
It absolutely is, and I think the one other thing that I've kind of discussed with some of my Notre Dame honks here in the Northeast Ohio area is it was Notre Dame or Miami getting in, and all of a sudden Notre Dame doesn't choose to play in a bowl game for whatever reason, and kind of like their athletic director discredits the committee and kind of throws backhanded jabs at Miami, although Miami did beat them in a head-to-head.
Yeah.
And then here Miami is, beating the number one team in the, in the country pretty much all year, which was Ohio State, going into the Big Ten championship game, and just keeps winning and position themselves. And I think it's a testament to Mario Cristobal for having a vision what Miami was capable of becoming. And he has just driven that speed that racer right to the finish line to get them to the point right now. And then on the flip side, and I know we'll get into it as you talked about the portal, but you look at the and again, I've been enamored with Curt Cignetti all year long and the job that he's done with what he has at Indiana, and he's only going to continue to get more. And I think which again, I'm kind of moving ahead too quickly, but you see even now how the transfer portal is affecting Ohio State. Yep. And I saw a chart. I think Ohio State is number one in the transfer portal with I think 20.2-year-olds leaving Ohio State and 21.8-year-olds coming in. So we're getting a year and a half older.
Yeah,
which is a lot of what Cignetti has kind of done by having these again. Ole Miss old team, Miami old team, and Indiana old team. With a bunch of veteran guys.
Yeah.
Matt, I may simplify this and it may not be accurate, but I feel like if Miami can't get pressure on Mendoza, they had 12 combined sacks against A&M and the Buckeyes. They had one against Ole Miss and almost lost. And if the guy in the stripes wanted to throw a late flag there, we might have had a different outcome. But if they can't rattle him at some point, I just don't see a close game here. Do you agree?
I agree. I agree with you. And I think the one thing that not just to deviate from what you were talking about, but I think what's been impressive by both Mendoza and Carson Beck throughout these playoffs is their ability to extend a drive with their legs. And I think to not only not get pressure on him, but then him to evade the pressure. And I've said this, Tim and I've talked about it. One of the most defeating things as a defender is you get good pressure, you got great coverage, there's nowhere to throw the football, and then somehow out of the grasp or he sneaks through the pressure, the quarterback leaks out and gets that first down with his legs. It's so defeating. And we've seen Carson Beck do it a bunch in every game that they played, Buckeyes included. We've seen Fernando Mendoza do it against the Buckeyes in the Big Ten championship game, and we've seen him do it in a couple of these college football playoff games. But I think you're right. And I think going back even into last season and really studying Curt Cignetti and the undefeated run they had last year until they had lost to Ohio State, and it's the RPO game as well. So the RPO game that Indiana employs, along with the drop back pass, is going to be huge for Miami on the back end, because if they're not going to be able to get home, it is going to be a long night. To Clay's point, and I think if I were Indiana, I would also study, kind of like what Ole Miss, how these teams blocked, this Miami front to get to the situation that they're in.
Hey, do you remember our pre-show meeting when I said we were going to start out a little bit about the game and then we're going to roll into what's going on at Ohio State?
Yeah.
And stuff. And was Clay at that pre-show meeting? I can't remember. Huh?
He was.
I get one question in 40 minutes, and he's
I'm
on
messing
my
with you.
ass
I'm messing
already.
with you. I'm messing with you. I'm
Matt,
not.
this is what I do. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Messing with you.
I got
I master the pivot. It's all good.
Yeah, you had the pivot going there really good, and then he came right back in and shot a three. You were down in the paint there asking for the ball. What sets both of these teams apart is you're right. Their quarterback's ability so far in the playoffs to make a play when the real play is gone. And we'll get more into that in a little while, because that is what sets it. I think Carson Beck has found himself in the last three games. most people were thinking he was going to be the reason they didn't win a playoff game, much less a national championship. And all of a sudden, he's the toast of the town, and that's a hell of a town to be the toast of, right?
Yeah, it is. And I'll be honest with you, but to be very frank, like Carson, it hasn't been pretty for Carson Beck.
No, it has not.
It's been efficient in some regard, but it hasn't been clean. It hasn't been clean. I also believe, and again, I don't have these stats as I have some, ingrained in my brain because I, peruse social media in preparation for not only this show, but just preparation to watch the national championship game. But I can't say he's thrown the over 30 yards consistently for a completion. He's got to be under 50% throwing the football over 25 yards. But I think that's Cristobal knows that. Their play caller knows that. I think the usage of Malachi Toney has been elite up to this kind of point in the football season. I think if I were Ohio State, just to pivot, go back and forth, kind of play both to Tim and to Clay, and this conversation is, I think I'm not saying that Brandon Inniss is Malachi Toney, but I think the usage of Malachi Toney could very much be constructed for Brandon Inniss next season with Jeremiah and, potentially Chris Henry Jr. or whoever's going to win that other, X or Z spot, opposite Jeremiah. But that usage of, the bubbles, the tunnel screens, that extension of the run game is something that Indiana is going to have to, really wrap their heads around because, gosh, I was watching the Miami game and I felt like every other pass was targeted towards Malachi Toney. And then eventually he just delivers the tunnel screen that splits the defense and really was kind of open things up. Yep.
There's the thing too. Urban Meyer had this great line about some of these guys too. Establish them at the least as hood ornaments, meaning when you look at that car, you gotta know Malachi Toney's going to jump out at you. You know what I mean? And if anything, you scare the defense with him too, right? I mean, as the old saying goes,
we saw that some of those big, those big third down digs were cut by other guys besides Malachi Toney, but so much of it had to do with the scare factor or the pre-snap motion or a shift of what he's capable of. Yeah. And it just opens up those windows. And I think, again, but that said, Indiana, as much as we're talking about Fernando Mendoza and these quarterbacks, the Indiana defense has been playing at an unreal level, on the back end as well as the front end.
Well, that could be one of the great matchups of the night, Toney against D'Angelo Pounds, if that's the way it breaks out.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There is a statement of fact. Exactly. I mean, you've got to eventually, the way Indiana, what's impressed me about Indiana defensively, if we're going to stay on the game, what's impressed me about Indiana defensively is their ability to play, I call it 11 on 11, instead of freaking out about this guy or that guy. They've been able, with the games they play up front, they give you enough of a problem from an offensive line standpoint to just give you that little sliver of a split second, tenth of a second doubt about what's going on in front of him. A guy looping over from lining up and straight up against the tackle and looping over, coming through an A gap, things like that. I mean, that's just an example. And every play, it seems to be a different pitch. If you follow my drift there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
they still only use, they'll throw 6 or 7 up there and still only rush 4. But
sure,
you know what I mean?
And I think, yeah, absolutely. That's the cat and mouse game. That's the chess match, that the defense coordinator versus an offensive coordinator and play caller has to kind of figure out sooner than later. And I think what's also most impressive about Indiana defensively, specifically on the back end, is they don't play a lot of man.
No.
And I mean, how many times, and I know Matt Patricia, to play press quarters or, and to play, trap 2 and, and sprinkle those things in to confuse a quarterback, especially without the season, you have to do those things because it's a long season. Sure. But at the end of the day,
keep everybody thinking. Yeah.
You keep everybody thinking. But at the end of the day, if I'm Matt Patricia or if I'm, maybe, the Miami Hurricanes defense coordinator, I'm going to go, I've got better players than they do. I'm going to lock them up and I'm going to go blitz 0. Or I'm going to go, man free, or I'm going to play robber, and I'm going to just wipe some of their guys off the board. And I think what's impressive, and again, Ohio State's done that, but yet Indiana's wide receivers have made plays all playoffs long. But on the flip side is Indiana doesn't have the guys to just go blitz zero. They'll sprinkle it in. But
Right.
I mean, it is kind of, it feels like we're talking about the first five. And I want to say that it didn't diminish throughout the season because it just stayed the same. It just became a standard. But I feel like we're talking about the Ohio State defense throughout the first 5 games with Matt Patricia's defensive coordinator, where it was like, pre-snap, they're showing one thing. Post-snap, they're doing something different. I think that the ultimate Swiss Army knife is going to probably be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, and Caleb Downs being able to cover a tight end man-to-man, play the deep middle safety, or be the robber, or get to the half and play his half the field and trap too. And just Indiana is confusing quarterbacks. And to your point, when you start, mugging up in there 6 or 7 guys, you don't know who's coming, who's not. That confuses an offensive line. It also confuses a quarterback.
Yeah.
So can
absolutely.
Carson Beck throw, or will the offensive coordinator and Mario Cristobal allow Carson Beck to throw the football consistently into some of those windows? Because we saw it. What did Indiana do the first play against Oregon? They had him dead to rights, pegged on the exact route that he was going to run, and the guy jumps it and turns it into a pick six. And that is, again, and we found that out, mid-game, but 7 points out of the gates, it's like, it's insurmountable with all of the momentum that's in the favor of the Indiana Hoosiers at that point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I just, to me, the contrast of styles of just the way they play up front, the two teams, Miami lines up, and I'm not going to say they play you honestly, but they play you fairly honestly. You know what I mean? I mean, they just send their big time dudes.
Well, they say that it's going to go. We're going to let our 4 maybe bring a 5th, and we're going to let them cook, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to figure things out on the back end, right? And I think in some cases they've been the superior athletes in most cases, and they're just going to go. We're going to let those guys cook, and we're going to leave you out there, and kind of like hung to dry. And we have yet to see, not Julian saying, not Chambliss, not pick them apart the way that we thought they would.
Yeah, and where Miami is great is getting to the quarterback at just that moment of decision where he's got to plant his foot and throw the ball. They did that with Julian saying time and again when he was me and Jeff, man, we chopped that up, and Clay, we chopped that up the day after, making him get off his spot just at the moment he wants to.
Tim, so much of that has to do with just the coverage being just good enough.
Yes.
Covering just long enough against elite receivers to allow that hit to get home. And then, as we saw as the game went on, you had Julian saying kind of seeing ghosts and flashes of white. Where open recievers would, they'd spring open and the ball was still in his hand. Yeah,
I agree. But I thought Miami did a decent job against Trinidad Chambliss. What did you think? I mean, but it still ended up being a hell of a football game. Like I was talking on the radio today here in Columbus about the fact that what has impressed me the most about Miami is its ability to get that drive in the fourth quarter. The previous 3 games, to get that drive that matters, that either puts the game away or wins the game. That's something to be said for that. You guys were good at that back in the day, in 2000.
Absolutely. And I think and here's the one thing about it, and it's maybe why we're a little like ho-hum about Miami and potentially even Carson Beck, is because it's not pretty.
Correct.
It's Mark Fletcher on the ground. It's a bunch of bubbles and touches to Malachi Toney. It's a scramble by Beck. And then Beck, as I've said earlier, makes that one throw on that little skinny, that little dig, using Malachi Toney as kind of a toy. And he makes that one throw that kind of like breaks you into the red zone. And then they're talented enough because they want to run the football. They're going to go get 6 on first down, then they're going to go get 3 on third down. And then Carson Beck runs and gets you the first down. Yeah. And now you're on first and goal on the 9, and then we saw it at the end of the game, Carson Beck, again, 2 Ole Miss guys run a stunt into each other. 1 falls on the ground. So you're really rushing with 3 instead of 4. Beck feels that, doesn't force the football, didn't lose Miami the game, and went and won it with his legs running out the back door.
Yeah. Unbelievable. That's it in a nutshell. And the point is, show me that script. You know what I mean? Yeah. No. The ability of players to make plays off script. I call that off script, meaning the defense that's not what I was supposed to take care of on this play. I mean, that's the beauty of a championship football team because they find a way to get over the goal line into the end zone.
And I'll tell you what, Tim, the one other thing that's got to be identified, throughout this football game, and again, I don't know how many times it's probably been charted somewhere, but that middle screen, that tunnel screen that Miami ran, so if at any point Carson Beck, I don't say it's losing you the game, but it's just not feeling comfortable, that is a go-to for that Miami offense. And we saw it, I mean, at least 5 times, at least 6 times, against Ole Miss. So if at any point, they're struggling offensively in the pass game, and Indiana and their front, who can get after a quarterback, which we know very well, starts building that confidence, and even Brian Haynes, the defense coordinator, wants to send that 5th. Miami will hit you, and they don't care if it goes for 1 yard, or 5 yards, or Malachi Tony pops it for a touchdown. It is just a built-in comfort zone for Carson Beck that he can throw.
Not only that, it's a pile driver play for the offensive line, for the guys getting out there in front and stuff. I mean, it's like, I would think, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, as a matter of fact, the last couple of shows, and I keep forgetting, what is it like when people run those kind of screens for a defensive player, which was your bailiwick, in terms of, man, if you're not looking at the ear hole of your helmet, you can be in a major crash. You understand what? And how many times can you go ahead? That's got to be intimidating.
That is such an you do have to have the timing, but when it's a figment of your offense, and it's something that you've been practicing since August.
Yeah. Like an overplay.
The timing of it, means a lot, and we see it Miami executed at a very high level. Is it actually also gives the offensive linemen a little bit of a break. Instead of pass setting and having to win that one-on-one matchup, they kick step, and then they're out hunting guys like me. They're out hunting a safety. And in some cases, you will, if you go back and watch those plays, you'll watch an offensive lineman, grab a linebacker or a safety and just mash him into the ground.
Oh yeah.
But in many cases, it's like a shield block. Like, you don't even have to be that physical, because I'm 6'6", 330 pounds, and I'm running at you. You have to avoid me. And when you avoid me the wrong way, Malachi Tony or a skilled Miami Hurricane is going to go the opposite and get those yards. It's the perfect change of pace, because you're so used to drop back pass. You're so used to run game and again, that's the one thing that I think Indiana is going to be prepared for, because that's a big play and a staple in the Miami offense. And I think if I were a defensive guy, and I think what Indiana is going to do prepare for this is study the down and distance. Any tendency that you can pick up, the formation, the personnel grouping, the place on the field. This is all the stuff that I used to do at Ed's when we had a team that runs a bunch of screens. It's like I charted them out, like I'm talking tally marks. I want to know where, every time they're between the 40s, they run 80% of their tunnel screens or middle screens between the 40s. Whatever. You just keep squeezing the data to the point where you're on high alert, so you can make that play, because it's such a go-to for Miami.
Yeah, and then, like I said, though, the specter of it, like you just said, you can know it's coming almost, but you're still going to have as John Cooper called it, a hog molly right on top of you. And the third or fourth time that happens, are you going to be as aggressive? Or are you going?
You're going to go around the block.
Correct. And then if Malachi Tony makes the right read, look out. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Clay. Clay had a point he wanted to make.
No, I didn't want to miss the pivot point. So are we now?
No, we're still talking about the game.
Because now we're 24 minutes deep in a game that you didn't really want to talk about.
No, I did want to talk about it. I want to talk about it at the end, but we could. But we're at the pivot. Like the thing about running a good offense is being off schedule, meaning they think you're going to run this tunnel screen, when in fact you fake the tunnel screen and come back to the backside where the defender's already tailgating it over to handle the tunnel screen. By the way,
have you?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I've just been bummed. I'll be honest with you, I've been disappointed in Ohio State not getting to that through the years. By the way, Matt, I mean, about showing this, but throwing it back over here. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Instead of being so predictable as to run that play that got pick sixed.
Yeah.
I don't know. that's always bummed me out because I'm thinking I'm gonna go back and watch the all 22 on that. I'm thinking if you had a backside guy, you got to make sure your linemen don't get upfield. Nobody gets upfield blocking. But if you just can throw that just one time, you might get. It might be pick six the other direction, meaning a quick six. And I don't know. That just jumped into my mind. Go ahead, Clay. I mean, say something else about the game, Clay. Keep us on this track.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm ready to pivot.
Well, I'm not ready to pivot.
Well, each week.
Matt's not ready to pivot. Matt's
right.
thinking game plan right now.
Yeah, he is. Did you ask for a prediction from Matt each week on, I mean, do you get down to that or no?
We will, but that would be at the end of the show, not at the beginning of the show. That's what's called the climax. That's called as we build, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We'll build to the climax.
Well, then I guess I would ask.
That sounded too.
The Indiana offensive front has been was lauded, and Pat Coogan was the MVP of the Rose Bowl, et cetera. They were not the Joe Moore Award winner. They were a finalist. So how do you see that matchup inside the matchup, I guess? Can they handle Bain and Mesidor
and company
on Monday? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is when I watched the Ole Miss game, the Miami Ole Miss game, and only because what was ingrained in my brain was our offensive lines, troubles and inconsistency against that front.
Yeah.
Hey, let me interrupt something real quick, but I want people to understand that Ohio State didn't get bushwhacked every play, but like I was saying a while ago, Miami just has this knack of making a play that screws up your drive. I mean,
right. But I think to contradict you just a little bit, and you're right in what you're saying, but that's what I wanted to see is how disruptive that defensive front for Miami was going to be against Ole Miss. And they weren't.
Yeah, and they weren't. They were not.
So to Clay's point,
I
think we've seen, Indiana's front handle our defensive front pretty well in the Big Ten championship game. And so I think they're up for this challenge. I think it's going to be a little give and take. I don't think Cignetti and Mike Shanahan are going to have Mendoza holding the football very long, at least not early in the game. So again, it's going to be quicks. It's going to be quick game out of gun. It's going to be the RPO stuff. They're going to want to establish the run, which I think they can. We've seen Indiana not overwhelm you physically, but they're just very technical and they're really, really good. So I think to say only because we're in Ohio, we have the all-time sack leader in Myles Garrett. Indiana's not going to go to the lengths that teams go to stop Myles Garrett, to stop, Bain and Mesidor. No.
Yeah.
And I think also, this is what I've said to Tim all year long, is these the recipes of success. And so you look at what did Ole Miss do and watch Indiana attempt to do that very same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then also play with the strengths of Mendoza and also the RPO game, which again, I've been in admiration of for now well over a year since Cignetti's taken that job.
Do you think Miami has actually had to scout Charlie Becker and that it's not just Surratt and Omar Cooper, because this Becker kid keeps making the plays that seem to break people's back?
They really are. Absolutely. And I think it's one of those situations where I could potentially see an athlete, especially from a school like Miami, being a little overconfident in covering a player like Charlie Becker and kind of just falling asleep. And I think, and that's where I think Charlie Becker is at his best, is when he kind of lulls you to sleep, then runs by you, either makes that toe tap, on the sideline for a big third down, or as the game goes on, we've seen him score that touchdown as the game goes on. And it's again, the defender's not close. And so I think, Indiana is just a very well-rounded, solid football team from kicker to quarterback to offensive line, the defensive line, to the back end, to their playmakers. It's not overly sexy, which is probably why a lot of people aren't going, oohing and ahhing over them. It's just consistent. And I think if you were to put a microphone on Cignetti, he wouldn't rather have it any other way.
Hey, Matt, I really think, I truly think when I look at this game, I think Indiana has the advantage at quarterback. I think Indiana has the advantage at wide receiver with the three guys we're talking about. I really do think they do. If you can somehow or another keep Malachi Tony.
Running back might be one where,
Right.
I'll take Mark Fletcher
Miami.
over
Yeah.
the two-headed monster at Indiana.
But these guys at Indiana, though, I mean, these little guys at Indiana do the job, though. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, and I think a lot of that has to do with very good discipline on the offensive line. I mean, they will attack what a lot of people think is the strength of a defensive front. They will attack that as opposed to, and I really like that as opposed to trying to trick anybody or
running
whatever
away from it.
They'll just like man up on a guy and hey, okay, let's see how tough you really are. I mean, kind of approach. It's not just smoke and mirrors, right? I mean, that's what's impressed me. Yeah, go ahead.
For Indiana, it all starts with the head football coach.
Yes.
And I know that, again, Ryan Day and Mario Cristobal and Kirby Smart and all these, Kalen DeBoer all probably operate exactly the same way. But I know that it's been exemplified and kind of like, taken to another level because of the success of Kurt Cignetti, just in at 5 a.m., watching film, watching practice, watching his, and it just, again, even just some of these little narratives that he puts out where, you love it, if you're not in the Big Ten or not at Ohio State, but you despise it if you're a Buckeye fan because guy kind of got the best of you. But it's just, they haven't played us yet. You know what I mean? And I think that's what he just has this immense confidence in his team that they're going to be so ready. I also think that, Mendoza is just mature beyond his years. And I think he's 23 years old. So he's an older guy, but he's got the mind of a 50-year-old man, and that moxie and savvy. And I also don't think this is the one thing that I think, Ohio State, they don't fall into this trap. Not anymore, they don't. But it's like they don't read their own press clippings. Like they don't care. Yeah. They're just enjoying this journey and they're just going out and doing the work. And I think there's something, admirable about this. And I think on the flip side, all that like Miami and the U represents with, Michael Irvin going crazy on the sidelines and Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Edgerrin James. And again, we can rattle off, 50 legends.
Hey, camera, look at me. Camera, look at me.
Yeah. Indiana's just like, look, put the camera on Cignetti with another shitty look on his face. You know what I mean? Even after a first down. It's like, and I think there's just, we as a fan base or fans of college football are just taken aback by all this so fast because no one's ever done it like this.
Yeah. Here's the thing too. It just popped in my mind when you're talking about that. If you don't have Mark Cuban on the sideline and maybe 2 or 3 other people, John Mellencamp or somebody, who is there to recognize? I mean, who's on the sideline for Indiana where people go, oh, yeah, I remember him. You know what I mean?
Antoine Randall L., right?
Yeah.
And he's coaching in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, that's the one name that jumps into my head.
Guy. Yeah. I mean, they don't have anybody. I mean, it's kind of sad in that respect. But, man, when Fernando Mendoza's showing up 20 years from now, people will be paying it. By the way, the Heisman jinx is dead, it looks like, because I'm telling you, he's played phenomenally in the playoff. Agreed? I mean, since the Heisman ceremony, he's looked damn good. Agreed?
He has. The one thing about Mendoza, and I think that's, and even going back to our Heisman conversation, is like none of the numbers from anyone, and I'll say excluding Jeremiah, even Jeremiah Love as a running back, none of them were, C.J. Stroud, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields numbers, who didn't win a Heisman either. They were 1,000 yards less and 25 touchdowns less. So they weren't gaudy, but I think what makes Mendoza is he's just so damn consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get. And I think in some cases, the recipe to bring it back to the Buckeyes here from it, the recipe to monkey with Julian Sayin is now out there, right? It's what coverages, what looks does he struggle with, and where does the pressure come from that he just tucks that ball and won't throw to an open receiver because he's just afraid to get sacked.
Yeah.
And we've never seen that out of Mendoza, who's won the Heisman.
Yeah. I mean, I just think in the biggest moments Mendoza has delivered, because obviously everyone wants to think about this. It was a freeway to the national championship game. Penn State had him on the ropes. Iowa had him on the ropes. The Ohio State Indiana game could have flipped on one play, and but they found a way to make the play when they needed to. Mendoza did, and in those moments, he was dead on the money. I mean, I mean, the fade, the little back shoulder throw to Surratt for the go ahead touchdown against Ohio State. The Omar Cooper play.
I mean, watching this football team, you think that Mendoza's been throwing to these receivers for a couple of years.
Yes.
And they've developed together
crazy?
in the same recruiting class.
Yeah.
And it's just this melting pot, of elite coaching and technique and confidence and execution that is kind of catching college football, like a little bit of a wildfire.
Hey, let me Clay, you got another point. I wanted to make a point.
Go right
I don't
ahead.
want to hog it. Here's the thing, though, about in Indiana, because I think most people still aren't just sold on them just being the dominant team. You know what I mean? Even though, my goodness, the first two playoff games, but your boy, did they parlay some turnovers into big time points against Oregon? 3 turnovers, touchdowns, right? I mean, that's a crazy start. That'll hurt any team. We saw what they did with Ohio State, 1 turnover for a touchdown, the pick 6, and there you go. Well, what I'm wondering is, as you look at that team, where could you take away somebody who's used to having a pretty good day? I'm still looking at their offensive line. I think it's a really good offensive line. Do I think it's great? It's been good enough for them to win 15 games in a row. But is there somebody, as you just looked at them, is there someplace you'd like to get to with your offense or your defense to attack, which will sort of like be something that they weren't necessarily thinking was going to break, like a levee on a dam, on a river. All of a sudden, wait a minute, we don't have anything to plug that levee with. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. I think this is, again, it's not going to happen this week or this Monday, rather. I think where, Indiana is, they've done something that's never been done before. Okay?
Right.
And it's like, and I think everyone's kind of, as opposed to sitting on the edge of their seat and saying, are they going to win a national championship? I find myself as a football fan going, what are the first 5 games they're going to play next year look like?
Yeah.
Right. With a bunch of new bodies and a bunch of new faces, and without Fernando Mendoza, but yet you still have Kurt Cignetti and you still have the model, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why you also say Cignetti earlier in the season when they took off maybe like a Power 5 or Power 4 matchup off their schedule and put like a G5 school in, and it's like,
South
the
State or
SEC's doing it.
somebody.
Why don't? Yeah. The SEC's doing it. Why don't we do it? Right? There's no point. And so I'm going to look at the first 3 to 5 games of next year and go, who's going to test these untested guys in an Indiana uniform, but with a proven system.
Yeah.
And maybe give them the first blemish they've had in a very long time if they finish this out this Monday.
Yeah, and they've got that quarterback coming in from TCU, highly rated, the Hoover kid. I like him a lot, man. I
like the Marsh kid from Michigan State.
Michigan State. Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said this past May and June, I thought Indiana was going to be better than it was last year, and definitely a quarterback, and definitely they were. I mean, the guy won the Heisman Trophy. I'm not patting myself on the back anymore about it, but I was back then because people were soft selling like the previous year was an aberration. I go, you're not paying attention.
Yeah,
the transfer portal, the ability to not necessarily go out and get 5 stars from a portal, but to get the guys you need that fit your system. That's huge. Which segues.
It's the perfect transition, to move on, is to just go to think that, our Buckeyes have always done things a certain way, whether it was with Urban Meyer or whether it was with Ryan Day. And now you have this, and again, we'll call it the Cignetti model, right? And again, he's not the only one. Lane Kiffin was doing it at Ole Miss for, since the portal started, right? And it just finally hit for him at Ole Miss in the college football playoff this year. But now you have, and again, you'll see Kirby Smart's probably going to drag this thing through the mud. I'm sure Dabo Swinney's going to drag this thing through the mud as long as he can. But it's adapt or get fired, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's the way of the world now. So I think, and again, thankfully, my son, again, not making it about him, is a part of one of the larger classes that Ohio State's taken in recruiting for a very long time.
Yep.
So that's all about the D word development, right? And developing these young men along the offensive line, along the, where they've stacked those positions. And I think it also has to do a lot with the fact that schools like Ohio State, Georgia, Bama don't want to have to go into the portal and pay an offensive line. And we learned that through the Oniwara kid coming from Rice, give someone that kind of money and not get any return on that investment of money. That's a hard lesson to learn. And so you'd rather take a couple of youngins and have them pay off in 3 years, a couple extra youngins and have them pay off in a couple of years, than pay that one guy that sum of money and do nothing for you. So college football is in full-on adaptation mode. You're just adapting to what's working. You're paying what the market's paying. You're constructing a roster, to win, not necessarily win. And I'll say this, that's the one thing we talked about is, I thought, and this is what's going to change for Ohio State, having lost 4 in a row against Michigan without be able to put a finger on why, it was, well, we need to be able to build a roster, to beat Michigan, right? While also building a roster to beat Oregon. Now it's while also building a roster to beat Indiana.
Yeah.
Yes. Because we're going to see them in Bloomington next year, and then potentially the opportunity to see him again in Indianapolis, because I don't see things changing for Cignetti, anytime soon. And so it's adapt or get left behind.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Clay.
Well, if we're transitioning, I think Ohio State's done a nice job this year. As I look at this, it's retention and acquisition. I think they've got equal parts. They haven't gone overboard. I mean, when you get Kenyatta, Saraveld, Hensman, Jermaine Matthews, and so on back, and then I think your portal class is what, second or third?
Montgomery back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now here's the thing. That's what Matt's leading us into here is the conversation of you've got to keep recruiting, and because there are some gems there that just need to be polished, but you've got to augment your roster from year to year. Because Matt, you were there for how long were you there? 4 years, right?
4 years.
Yeah. I mean, you saw guys came in with you. Some of them stepped up, some of them stepped to the side, and some of them stepped back. That's inevitable with humans. No matter how much they're ballyhooed, you're going to have guys like yourself who stepped up and then stepped up some more.
Yeah.
Others are going to reach their level. And back in the day, you couldn't necessarily just get rid of them. Well,
sure.
I mean,
you
couldn't fill in for them if you got rid of them. Go ahead.
Correct. Yeah. But I'm just going to say, there's been a new standard created in college football.
Correct.
Okay? And Ohio State, we saw last year winning the national championship, just like this year's Indiana team and this year's Miami team and this year's Ole Miss team, an old football team, right?
Yes.
Meaning a lot of experience. Okay. So that's a winning trend. I'm sure going back a year to Michigan, probably an old football team with a lot of guys ready to leave for the NFL. Okay.
No question.
And you look at Indiana, same thing, an old football team, right? With a lot of experience, whether it's at the G5 level or at the Power 4 level, really doesn't matter. It's about the mastermind behind it. That's Curt Cignetti. Well, we've got our own mastermind in Ryan Day. And I think, and I give kudos and props to, not only Ryan Day, but other, big programs that are adapting to this new system, because to maintain the expectations, and again, Ryan Day puts it out there, is the expectation of Ohio State is to win every game we play.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't adapt, the expectations then have to change.
Yes.
It's winning 10 games is good enough. Okay. That means winning all your non-conference, maybe losing, to the big one we have early against maybe Texas. Or I know we got Bama in the future, got Georgia in the future, beating everybody you're supposed to beat in the Big Ten, losing a close one to maybe Oregon or Indiana at another juncture, and you go 10-2. You make the college football playoff, and you're similar to this. You're sitting in a similar situation. You're probably playing a first-round game instead of having a first-round bye. Yeah. But you're kind of left in the dust by all the other schools who have money and have adapted this winning system now using the portal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's the point. It's catching. I think people are going, if Miami wins the national championship this year, it'll be the second straight year a team with 2 losses has won the national championship. See, that's what people have really got to get straight. I mean, fans, critics on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you criticize, I'm talking to you. You got to get used to the fact that this is not the Woody Hayes era. You know what I mean? This isn't. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to win them all. You don't have to win them all to win it all. And correct. Hey, that's a good line I just came up with there. I like that. But I think it's still going to take time for that, because guys, like, people have to have something to criticize. But I want to get into this, Matt. By the way, I don't know if you've been down to Ohio State since you took Mason to enroll, et cetera. But I would think everybody's walking around with name tags on because who knows anybody, right? I mean, it's what 26, 28 freshmen are going to be on that team,
and 30 in the portal,
and all these portal guys are going to be joining. It's and so far they've only lost one coach. They've got a new coach in, obviously, for the wide receivers, but that's great because you knew everybody in the lot when you were playing. It was a total different dynamic, right?
Oh, I mean you're talking, like 2 to 3 guys would leave because it was so detrimental to your career because of the rules at that point, sitting out a year.
Yeah.
No, but I have not been down to see Mason, at least not yet. We're kind of giving him, his time to go get acclimated.
I was being facetious.
No, I understand. No, I understand. And I think that, no, you're absolutely right that, but I think as fans and as, alumni, you start poking and prodding at who you think is going to start there and what the offense is going to look like, what the 2 deep might look like. And I think that's the one thing I go back to about, not only, I'll say specifically our Buckeyes is where so many fans in many cases believe that the sky is falling, if we lose a game or if we lose a player. We lost 14 really, really good ones last year after a national championship to the NFL draft. Okay?
Yeah.
And a speckling of kids to the portal, right? Like you always will. And then somehow, some way, we ran the table all the way to the Big Ten championship game to meet an undefeated football team in Indiana who's on an amazing run. So, and I think, Tim, you and I have talked about it, the Caden Currys and the Stovers and like the next man up, the Caden McDonald, you know what I mean? Caden McDonald was a rotational, 2 last year behind Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, right? And now he's a top 20 NFL draft pick.
I know.
That's never going to change at a school like Ohio State. That's never going to change at a school like Bama and Georgia and Notre Dame and a handful of these top 8, top 10 blue bloods. So that is who we are. And I think it's also, only because I've also seen the portal numbers and how they affect these young men is the grass isn't always greener,
No.
and I know that, again, in 2 years, if we're doing the show and, and Mason's in a similar situation, we're like, oh, Mason's got, $600,000 from another Power 4 school, after being developed, for 24 months at Ohio State. Does he stay for less to be a Buckeye and just trust the process, or does he take the money and run? That's what's being put in front of these kids. And I think that's something that a lot of fans, don't
understand.
Their heads around.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Aaron Scott and Bryce West did, right? I mean,
Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham. I'm just going.
You were talking about them this morning.
Well, I know, but it just bothers me. I mean, it bothers me that you're saying, Matt, you're in a big time program that's going to develop you. I mean, we've seen proof of that, but all of a sudden this mass exodus now of 90% of those guys, okay, they can move on and you can fill in the gaps with them. But like a Quincy Porter, he was my favorite all through spring last year because all he did was make spectacular catches. Maybe that was his problem. All he did was make spectacular catches. As Chris Carter, all he did was catch touchdowns. But he's in the Hall of Fame now. But my point is, it's like those are the guys that, and I know Ohio State is fighting to keep guys like certain guys, but not all of those guys, right? I mean, It's a two-way street. And
and here's the other side of it is, if you get, again, this is just to make it about Ohio State, and I have another point on the portal as well, is, if you're an NFL football team and you have a quarterback on a rookie contract, you can spend other places.
Correct.
With a Super Bowl window being open and spend, you can pay Myles Garrett $60 million and Denzel Ward $40 million while you're starting Shador or Dylan Gabriel, right? But eventually, when you then have to re-sign, Josh Allen or Jaden Daniels, the next wave, all of a sudden everybody's got to take a pay cut and you get cut, and your Super Bowl window now, because you got to pay your quarterback, shrinks or it's smaller.
Correct.
That's one other effect that has happened is, to have a Heisman semifinalist, and I don't even know the number, and I'm not even going to speculate what the number is, but to have a Heisman finalist in Julian Saban as a redshirt freshman making what he was making probably 15 to 20% of his actual market value at Ohio State as a redshirt freshman this past season. Well, after that year, just like Bo, don't you think their play is indicative of a pay raise, very similar to the way the NFL operates?
Yes.
Well, you
Yes.
can't pay everyone, and it's like you've got to be out there playing. And I think this is the one, and this is my point. And it sticks in my brain because I was sitting there watching a Cleveland Browns football game with my son. Carson Schlesinger, linebacker for the Browns, probably going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. And he goes, and it was the commentator, I don't know who it was, goes, 1 year starter at UCLA, gets drafted in the second round, and is now going to be likely the Defensive Rookie of the Year in the National Football League.
Yeah.
So all these kids are trying to find magic, hitting the portal. And then you have this kid, I think Carson Wester was also I think he was a walk-on as well at UCLA.
Yeah.
Just puts his head, and that's my message to my son. Shut up, shut your mouth, put your head down and work in school and in football, right? And I go, let everyone else around you tell you when it's time to pick it up. And to me, that story of Carson Schlesinger that's a kid who was doubted, bet on himself, stayed, developed, got 1 year of starting experience, good enough for one of 32 teams in the NFL to take him in the second round. So the kids probably put $14 million in his pocket. Okay. Maybe not all fully guaranteed, probably 5 or 6 guaranteed of that deal. And is now going to be the Defensive Rookie of the Year and be a stalwart in an NFL defense for the time to come. So there's something to be said about, and again, I see both sides. Believe me, I flip back and forth like the wind on this. I do think structure is needed, but and I also see, when there's a significant amount of money and an opportunity, to be a plug and play starter somewhere else, you want to go do that because you can develop that way. But there's enough out there for people to get involved and actually start tweaking this system and make it for the better.
Yeah. But, Ohio State's picked up 3 guys from Alabama out of the portal. That's interesting.
I think 6.
Yeah. I mean,
6 total. Excuse me.
What are you talking about? 6?
Well, they got the 2 defensive guys. They've got Dominic Kelly, and then this Cam Coleman in the last day or 2.
Yeah.
So they're and I read it's now 6. So I don't know the other 2.
But the bottom line is, I mean, that's going from like to like, right? I mean, you know what I mean, Matt? I mean,
I love that.
Trying to find, but like real quick before we get out of here, the Onionwa thing, I'm not holding him. You are who you are. You play. You get as your you get your just desserts that you deserve, or wherever that saying was from Jim Trussell. He practiced all through the spring last year. We all thought he's going to be the left tackle because it's spring, right? And that's like you just brought up, although that's a cautionary tale, though, to think that you're going to, in essence, buy an all Big Ten or an All American left tackle out of the transfer portal market. It's like you said, development has to be part of the game, or you're really screwing yourself, right? As a football program, et cetera. And I think Ohio State, as much as Mark Pantoni and Ryan Day and all these coaches are building this thing now in an interesting way, one of the largest freshman classes of all time on one hand, and portal wise, they're going to end up with 14, 16 guys out of the portal.
Yeah. I'll tell you what,
that's kind of a crazy mix when you think about the other, let's say 20, 40, that's almost 40 guys, maybe more than 40 guys. Only about 50 guys will be holdovers. You know what I mean? I mean, from your previous roster, that's kind of crazy to think about.
It absolutely is. And I think that's the challenge that these coaches have. And I think, for Ryan Day, while also going out to fill in those gaps and again, take the money out of it, go find the right players to fill in those gaps.
Players, correct.
To maintain the culture, to maintain the brotherhood, to maintain, the expectations, to maintain the emphasis on the game, and have them learn that very quickly. And I think that, and I'm going to pivot really quick just to, one individual who's meant so much to this university the last 2 years, and Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
Again, Alabama guy coming, so good to good, or great to great, elite to elite, right? But then just how Ryan Day, knowing him personally, held him in regard as a person and a player goes to show how unique he was, as like a little bit of an anomaly in the portal that can come to a school, elite to elite, adapt and even get better in this atmosphere, that's lightning in a bottle, and you're not expecting to, those are the polar opposites of the Oniwara side and the Caleb Down side, right? It's the good and the bad of it. And I think, but there's still standards, that in recruiting, for high school kids, there's still standards for Ryan Day and his staff that are these people great player, but are they right for this culture? Are they right for this scheme? And I think that's something to be said that a lot of people on the internet, just because a guy hits the portal, all of a sudden he's a perfect fit for us because he's talented.
No, not necessarily. But then that real quick before you go, that to me is the interesting dynamic in all of this is in that short little period of the portal. When you're recruiting a kid out of high school, Ohio State had their eye on Mason and kept, I'm not saying stringing him along. They wanted to see different things develop in him as the year, you were part and parcel of that. You witnessed it. They wanted to see did he become more of a leader? Did he become physically what they were looking for? Did he mentally, could he handle the rigors of the game on a continual basis? And number 3, was he just tough as nails, right? Because you got to be that. But they did it over several years. In the portal, you got to do that sometimes over several days.
Yeah. Well, I think Tim, to your point, and again, I don't know this to be true, but I'm going to assume that if I was in that position, this is what I would do. The coaching network is a good old boy network. Like everybody's worked with everybody or knows somebody who's worked with somebody at some point or another. So on a player, I think, and again, everyone would be surprised how coaches coach to coach talk about a player. Yeah. Both good and bad.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You could say this guy who's a really, really good player, he's a piece of what, right? You just talk very candidly because you're kind of like in that nest.
Yeah.
So I think, and I don't know this to be true, speculating, is I believe that not just Ohio State, but everybody, you work your Rolodex on anybody that's had any time with this young man and go, what do you think? Shoot me straight. We like him. What about this? And you start, again, you kind of expedite that process by taking someone's word for it, but you're calling that person because you trust them. You're calling that person because they're accredited. You're calling that person because he's an evaluator. You're calling him because he's been in the game for 10 years and he's got a good eye. And I think that's I would imagine, to expedite this evaluation process, not only, and again, putting on the film is putting on the film, but then also, who are they as a person? Who are they as an individual? Who are they as a student? Because a lot of these guys are going to come in and still have to take classes. That's the one thing that's overlooked in all of this is the academic. Guys are, classes started. Okay.
Right.
Okay? And guys are still in the portal, not in class.
Right.
That are going to come in a week or two late. Even the portal closes. That doesn't mean they necessarily sign somewhere. And it's like they're going to start school 3 weeks behind, and I know that everybody can say school doesn't matter.
By the way, that's the way those people sound. Go ahead now.
Yeah, it's the premise of why you call it college football, not professional football, because you're attached to a college. So it's a wild, funky situation right now. I do think guardrails and parameters need to get put on it in some capacity. I also, on the flip side, am very.
But we've been saying that. Yeah. I'm
reluctant to say, and I've said this to Tim before. I didn't make a penny, by being an All-American linebacker on a national championship winning team, and my son's going to get more money for doing nothing at Ohio State. As a true freshman. So that's just the way of the world.
He'll be doing something, just people won't be able to see it immediately. Exactly. Maybe, who knows? He may be LaCharles Bentley when this thing is all said.
But I meant he hasn't done a thing yet, and they're paying these kids because it's the rules. And for someone who did a lot, myself and many others,
that's what the NFL finally got a handle on. Hey, why are we paying all these rookies all this money? They finally put parameters there.
Sam Bradford was the last one. I think Sam Bradford was the last number 1 overall pick with like 45 million guaranteed. And all of a sudden it calibrated. And I think Cam Newton was the next one. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, the number 1 overall pick who had those rules applied to him as the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, he probably took a pay cut coming from Auburn. No, I'm just joking. By the way, every time somebody says Sam Bradford, you know what I think of? I think of Will Ferrell in Austin Powers when he went down and had to crash on isn't it funny how Southern California, England looks nothing like Southern California or whatever. But anyway, when Will Ferrell was down, he's talking about, I'm very badly injured. I think I'm going to stand up now and try my leg. And you know what I mean? And then he breaks the other one. That's Poor Sam Bradford, man. Golly. I think he was a hell of a quarterback, by the way. But
great quarterback, yeah.
Dude, once you get in the NFL and you start getting hurt, I mean, that's just fate, or whatever you want to call it. Hey, your last question here. Clay wants to ask you who's going to win on Monday night. Go ahead, Clay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well take a stab at it. Sure. Go right ahead.
I'm going to take a stab, and I wrote this number down right when you asked it the first time. I wrote it down.
Okay.
Knowing that we get to this point,
you prepared.
Good point in the show. I've got it 38-20 Hoosiers.
Wow, that's a lot of points.
Yes,
that's a lot of points. What you got, Clay?
I wish I'd have thought about it. No, I can't go away from Indiana. I would say 31-17.
Dang, that was literally going to be my pick. I'm going to say 30. I'm going to say 31-16 just to be different.
Yeah.
What I like is I do like the way Indiana on both sides of the ball ends up making plays. And Indiana has a real knack of getting to what I call a low-hanging fruit, which is the football that quarterbacks like Carson, like some of these guys just kind of hang out there now while they're not getting taught better is beyond me. Carson Beck has a propensity to hang the ball out there a little bit. I mean, one little turnover here and there can make a play, can make the game difference. I'm going to go with 31-16 Indiana because I do think they'll get a cheap one, and then I'll think they'll get a couple of drives. They will figure out this Miami defense. Your pick again was 38.
38-20.
38-20. So we're all pretty much in the same ballpark.
I just feel like, I don't know, man. Indiana can score.
Yeah.
Indiana can score, and Miami can't.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, I would have never guessed. And I know the defensive play kind of skewed things in one direction in the Oregon game, but I found myself almost wanting to turn the game off because it wasn't even worth watching anymore.
You know what? I was the other way. I would have been a great patron in the Coliseum in Rome. Because I wanted to see just what are these Lions gonna do to these people?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, just how bad can it get? Right? I mean, it was, And by the way, I like Dan Lanning, but man, can you imagine being in his hot seat right now? Because that's got to be a little bit of a hot seat because they've spent money, right?
Oh yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They've spent money on a roster, and 2 years in a row they've gotten embarrassed in the Rose Bowl. I mean, or whatever game that was they were in.
Peach Bowl.
Yeah, the Peach Bowl. Rose Bowl, Peach Bowl. They look the same to the Oregon fans.
And I think that's the one thing, not to be long-winded, but Oregon to multiple years in a row reaching the college football playoff, that is a standard, that I think that Oregon football and their donors are going to be happy with. I think now, to your point, Dan Lanning's not on a hot seat, right?
No.
But I think, you want to see the step get taken to make an appearance in the national championship game, right?
Yeah.
And I think for Ohio State fans, it's, we've got a taste of the first, 12-team playoff and how that went, not hosting a game in Columbus and then going, Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and what was the one in between? I don't even remember.
No, it was Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and it was Tennessee, and then Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and the national championship wasn't the Peach Bowl. I think it was just the national championship.
Okay.
Yeah, right. In Atlanta.
And so we've got our taste of, going back to the Cotton Bowl. I don't know even though we had success last year in the Cotton Bowl, if, after Missouri and now Miami in the Cotton Bowl, it's like, I don't want to be in Dallas-Fort Worth anytime soon.
Yeah.
So finding another path to success.
Yeah, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of paths, Matt Wilhelm. Thank you for guiding us down this path, Matt. I think we went to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and came back up. And luckily we had some mules to ride, but
Sherpas.
Matt,
up and back.
Thank you very much, man.
Of course, guys. You got it always.
And ladies and gentlemen, for Clay Hall, I'm Tim May, and for Matt Wilhelm, we'll see you next time. Shh. By the way, Clay has left the room. I wanted to let you folks in on a real bargain out there in the world of simulator golf. The Back Nine Golf, which is located at 2820 Fishinger Road in Upper Arlington, has a hell of a holiday box available to you right now. The value is nearly $300, but your price is $150 if you jump online. That's almost 50% off if you jump online at Columbus@theback9golf.com. That's their email address. Their website is theback9golf.com/Columbus-upper-Arlington-OH/. That's a long that's a long address, but just write it down a couple times watching it. And you can also call them at 614-362-7888. Parentheses putt, PUTT. But the bottom line is one of the new ultra modern simulators that you can find in the greater Columbus area, and it's really right there in the middle of Upper Arlington. I know Tito Thidoff and I hopped in there the other day. I think it was 16 degrees outside. There was snow and ice everywhere, and we played Pebble Beach, and we did it in less than an hour. So it's one of the great bargains going out there. And with this holiday box, you get 1 month of Birdie membership. You get Back Nine branded golf balls. You get cozy Back Nine beanie, and you get premium Back Nine towel. So that's a hell of a deal, because basically it's unlimited golf. It's 24/7. You get a code to get you in the door, and then you can go from there. And it's definitely fun. It's the premises are pristine. I know we had a great time. We even played closest to the hole, a few shots on number 7, famed number 7 short par 3 at Pebble Beach the other day, and had a great time doing it. So if you're looking for that last minute gift for a golfer that you love, or yourself that you love, that you're a golfer, nothing wrong with giving yourself a gift at this time of the year. That's the Back Nine Golf holiday box, and it's only a limited time. And there, as you can imagine, there are only a few available. Quantities are tight. So check in at theback9golf.com.